Hello and welcome back.
Okay, I want someone who was there. I don't care about someone who thought, who got it from someone, who got it from someone, who got it from someone, who got it from someone. I want someone who is actually there. I want a Matthew and a John. I want a Mark and a Luke. Somebody of that caliber. Give me a name. You can. What do they claim? Zaidi bin Thabit. He's a
But
second.
we don't have anything. We don't have anything of him.
Nothing.
So I can't claim that. Sorry.
You can't claim that. You're going to have a problem trying to claim anything. So let's go ahead and let's see what happened 5 months ago. Because now we come to what the same dilemma that these two scholars came about. So let's start the PowerPoint.
Here we go.
So the Muhammad of faith versus the Muhammad of history. Now you stop me at any time that we can discuss, and I probably will ask you questions as we go. Okay. This is not a very long slide, but it has quite a bit of animation. So that's why I want to go slowly. So here's the question we're asking. If Muhammad is so great, and he is, he is the paradigm for all Muslims, and he is the paradigm for all humanity and for all time. If he is so important, what he said and what he did are so important, because you can't do anything today if you're a Muslim without going to the Hadith and the Sira to look at what he said and did. So what Muhammad did, you do. What Muhammad said, you say. Am I correct on that, Adam?
Absolutely. We have to follow him. He is the example for the mankind.
Okay. So that is why I want to ask, where are these extant manuscripts of these people who were right with him, the eyewitness account? Now, two Muslim scholars back in July. I'm going to start with Dr. Shabir Ally in Toronto on July 28th, admitted that everything we know concerning what Muhammad said and did came from 200 to 300 years of Isnad. Explain Isnad to people.
Chain of narration. So basically, he said to this guy, he said to this guy, because things are being written almost 300 years after the death of Muhammad. So they need Isnad, means chain of transmission.
Okay. Basically, we call that oral tradition, or what we would call today hearsay, right?
I wouldn't say hearsay. Sorry. We have a chain. If a hearsay doesn't have a chain.
Okay. So do you support? I mean, do you trust oral tradition?
Now, you are hitting me hard now. I wouldn't trust all of the oral tradition.
Okay. And his daughter, Safiya, who is there asking this question in this episode on July 20th, asked this very question. Well, how do we know that these Isnads are true? How can we trust these Isnads? And he says, we can trust them because the Sahaba, those who were right there, the eyewitnesses, were completely trustworthy, had perfect memory, and what they recited to others was 100% accurate.
That is impossible.
Hold on a minute. Why is that impossible?
No human being can be this 100% accurate, number one. Number two, even in the Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih al-Muslim, we see even Muhammad can forget things. So if the prophet, the greatest prophet of all time, can forget things, how can the Sahaba, who's a follower of Muhammad, will not forget things?
Exactly. All right. His daughter came back to him and said, Sahaba? Oh, so how many Sahaba are you talking about? He said 120,000. What does that tell you?
There were 120,000 people who were perfectly memorizing everything according to his claim then.
Now, come on, let me ask you something. Do we demand that about Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John?
About what? Sorry.
Do we demand that they had perfect memory, that they were completely trustworthy, and what they wrote was so accurate because what they saw and what they did, what they saw and what they heard was exactly perfectly understood?
We can't demand that from any human being, can we?
That's what Shabir Ali is giving to his daughter. Do you see a problem here?
Absolutely.
Can you imagine? I mean, I've been watching this series on TV called The Chosen, and when you look at the disciples, they were irascible. They were funny guys. They were just like you and me. They were quite normal people, actually. They got into arguments. They were vying with each other. Who is the greatest? So could you say that these men, that we would depend on their trustworthiness or they have perfect memory? Would we demand that of them?
We cannot.
No. What is it? Why is it we trust them? It's not their memory that we trust. What is it we trust about them?
The text they have written right there and then with their eyes that you have seen, or yeah.
And they passed it to everybody else, didn't they?
Absolutely.
So what Matthew wrote, what John wrote, all the other disciples read, did they not?
Absolutely.
So they would have known, and they, of course, when they wrote it, they knew that the others are going to read it. So they had to be careful that they were absolutely perfect. What Jesus said and what he did had to be perfectly written down.
And yes, they were arguing about different things in the gospel accounts, that they were arguing about these things. And yes, that is so basic of humankind. So yeah,
Peter denied Christ 3 times, and that's written down.
absolutely.
So they wrote down even the what we call bad breath material. They wrote everything down as it was. So we would never have to fall back on what he's saying here. But how does Shabir Ali know that they were trustworthy, that they had perfect memory, and what they recited to others was 100% accurate?
Oh, that's a good question. I have never ever questioned this to anybody. That is a good question. How do we know, or Shabir Ali or anybody who claims that they had perfect memory? Like, wow, that's impossible. There's no way to know that.
Hutton's over here. She's right here listening in. Hutton says they had certainly had much better memory than Muhammad, because Muhammad claimed he was quite clear that he didn't have perfect memory.
Absolutely, but
So
like,
Shabir Ali is so certain that 120,000, that's a huge number. Now stop and think that through. 120,000 Sahaba. That means people that actually were with Muhammad listening to what he was saying. What about the other people that were there that were not the Sahaba, like all the tradesmen and all the people who were in charge of restaurants, and the people who were the sweepers, and the people who were the government, and the soldiers, and all the other people who were not with the Prophet? If 120,000 were with the Prophet, I would suggest that would make Mecca maybe, let's just say, because every one of those Sahaba had wives, I would guess, and they would probably have children. So how many people would you guess off the top of your head were actually living in Mecca at that time?
at least multiply by 6 of them in an average.
So about 500,000, right?
More than 500,000, yes, you're right.
Okay, we're talking about the size of Las Vegas right there. And yet no one's heard about this place. And what do people do in Las Vegas? They come and they fly in, don't they? They don't live in Las Vegas. They come basically to enjoy themselves, to gamble, and to watch shows, and to hear music. Am I correct?
Yes, and then they fly back.
And then they fly back all over the world. They come from all over the world to Las Vegas. And everybody knows about Las Vegas because of the people that have been there, right?
Absolutely.
And what was Mecca? What was Mecca at that time in the 7th century?
A trading hub.
It was where all the pilgrims came, right?
Yes, and pilgrims came to a trading hub, and everyone was coming there for pilgrimages from around the corner.
All over the world, right? Of that part of the world.
Yes.
And they would go home, right?
Yes.
And they would talk about Mecca, right?
Absolutely.
And yet we hear no reference whatsoever in any documentation outside of that. That's a whole nother area we could go into. We're not going to take on that right now. I just wanted to get your response on if Shabir Ali felt that there was 120,000 of these Sahaba. That's just the ones who actually heard and listened. Then I would suggest, what is he going to say about the city of Mecca then itself? Now that was on the 28th. Earlier than that, on July 9th, Dr. Yasir Qadhi made a similar kind of claim in Dallas, Texas, on July 9th. He admitted that all Western scholars consider the Sira and the Hadith as discredited historically. He made that claim. And he was doing this on a YouTube Zoom channel. Sorry, not a YouTube channel. Yeah, it was a YouTube channel, but he was being zoomed in for that. And they asked him, how, if you were, you just written this book on the Salafis, and you're no longer a part of this organization, but you've written a kind of historical overview. Where did the Salafis get their material from, and how do they know what they said and what they wrote was actually historically accurate? And his response was, well, we know that the Sira and the Hadith are discredited historically. That went all over the airwaves. That caused a huge amount of uncomfortableness in Epic, East Plato Islamic Center there outside of Dallas, Texas. And so on July 31, he was being asked to explain that. So
but
on July, go ahead.
May I say on the first part of his statement, because he actually used the word all Western scholars.
Yep.
So I know a lot of them actually say that, but do you agree that it is all Western scholars who say that?
He did say Motsky doesn't. Motsky is one of the few. He did mention that. Probably not Motsky, but everything else, almost all of them else, he
So
said
that
yeah.
will be like 99.9999% then.
Absolutely. So we're talking about, let's just say, the majority of Western scholars.
Wow. So he knows that for a fact, and he has studied that, and he knows only one name who does not do that. Okay, perfect. So now we can go for his rebuttal because
No,
he
wait,
actually
before that,
said the truth.
before we get to rebuttal, he went on and he did say something. He says, listen, I'm the best one to answer this question because I am the only one that has a foot in both camps. And he says, there are two epistemologies in the world today. I went to Medina and got the highest degree you can get in Medina on the traditions. So I have the highest degree you can get in Islam over here. But I also got a PhD from Yale University on historical criticism. So I also have the highest degree you can get in the West. So I am in both camps. He said, I have a foot in both camps. And there are two completely epistemologies. On this side, when I go to a mosque, when I'm talking to Muslims, I quote from Sahih Bukhari, I quote from Sahih Muslim, I quote from Tirmidhi and Ibn Dawud. I quote from all of these six traditions. I have no problem quoting from them. When I leave the mosque and I go to Epic Center or when I come to Yale University, I never quote from Sahih Bukhari. I would never,
What?
ever use them as my authority. So he says, I understand both. And he says, there's no way we can bring these two epistemologies together. And then he made this great comment. He said, if there's anybody who could take the historical process and apply it to the Sira in the Hadith, I would be the first to buy your book. I would be the first to buy your book, but I don't see this as ever happening. Now, he said that on July 9th. Hutton wants to say something.
Just a quick note. His PhD is in Ibn Taymiyyah.
Ibn Taymiyyah, yeah. No, Ibn Taymiyyah. But he's claiming that he understands the historical critique. And he will get into that on July 31st, what he means by that. So that was on July 9th. So he said,
That's a very bang moment to say such a claim. And to everyone who's watching and listening, like this part that he said, I think was played by Sister Hatun as well. I was watching one of her video where she was enjoying with somebody on this segment that he said.
That was me. We did that together, didn't we? You and I think.
I did a couple of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
that
was quite beautiful statement of his, and thanks for reminding me. It just slipped my mind that it happened. So thank you so much. So this is the same video of his where he said all of this. So yeah. So it's beautiful that our viewers also can know that now. So yeah. So obviously there was a lot of backlash. Yeah.
A few weeks later, on July 31st, this is 3 days after Shabir Ali had already explained what he meant. Dr. Yasir Qadhi had to then explain what he meant. Okay. And he said on July 4th that he tried to explain this to his Epic students, and they recorded, and you can watch it. And I was watching what he had said. And he claimed that, similar to Dr. Ali, Muslims do not need to trust Western scholarship because they have a secular bias. And so he said, when you look at the whole historical edifice, how it was created basically to confront the Bible. Now, that's not true. It wasn't created to confront any one book. It was created to confront all historical books. But it has been used most popularly on the Bible. That is true. I would agree with that. But he says, and it did a great job on the Bible. However, we cannot use those same criticisms. And he's talking about redacted criticism and source criticism and form criticism and textual criticism, the higher and lower criticisms, historical criticism. He was talking about those criticisms that he learned when he was at Yale. We cannot apply that to these traditions. And the reason why, he said, is because those criticisms have a secular bias. Do you agree with that?
Okay. I would reserve my right not to say anything at this moment. Unless I listen next.
Hold on. So they have a secular bias built into them, and they were only created, he said, really to apply to the Bible, not to anything else. Instead, he said, we as Muslims, we simply have iman, which means belief. Why are you laughing?
So iman is just accept what is being said and forget everything else. So why is he giving a presupposed position while saying that it is for the Bible, not for anything else, and just believe in Iman and that's it? Like, it doesn't make sense now.
He says, we have Iman. I'm not going to laugh. That's a perfectly legitimate answer to give. We have belief, he said, that what the Sahaba, those who were the eyewitnesses, saw and heard, that they were 100% accurate. And they could be completely trusted. Now, this is quote by quote. Because of the purity of that first generation, as well as their ability to recount and pass on completely and accurately everything they saw and heard. Muslims, therefore, merely had to believe that the traditions were true and then passed on faithfully. Now, if you were a student sitting in that classroom there in Dallas, what would you feel?
I laugh, just like I laughed right now.
You just laughed. You're right. You've come out of this because you no longer are the people of Iman. You don't have a belief. It's almost like what he said back in 2020 when he was being asked by Muhammad Hijab, when he says, what about the whole historical critique? What about these questions there that you found at Yale University? And he says, we have a respect for the Quran. We have a red line. There are certain questions we just don't ask. We don't pass that red line. In some ways, he's kind of repeated it in a different way here. And it's not that we even ask the questions. We just believe that these men were 100% accurate, that they could be absolutely trustworthy, that they had a purity of heart, unlike anybody since then. And as to what they recounted and passed on, it was accurately passed on 100% accurately. Generation, and you say about 8 generations up till the 9th century. Now, what that means to me is basically, this suggests to me that everything Muslims are dependent on for their prophet is based not on history at all, but merely dependent on a leap of faith. What do you think?
I think your statement needs some additional words. Leap of faith on mere human beings of that particular time, not a leap of faith on Muhammad, not a leap of faith on Allah. So if you have a leap of faith on Muhammad, that is your prophet, I can agree with that and I can go further from there. If your leap of faith is on Allah, okay, I can still do that. But if your leap of faith is on 120,000 people living at that particular time, that they were 100% trustworthy and none of them had the audacity to say anything else, that is not a leap of faith. I don't even have an English word for that. So that I'm going to use my kind of a word because of my limited vocabulary in English. That is just simply stupidity.
Okay, or desperation, maybe.
Okay, desperation.
Well, however, it's worse than what they admit publicly. It's much worse than what he thought in July, according to their extant manuscripts. This is what he didn't know. And what he did say is, we can trust on 200 years of tradition, of oral tradition, that we can trust what they said. We can trust what Muhammad said and what Muhammad did because of 200 years. It's just a gap of 200 years. That's what he said back in July. What he doesn't know is what we now know.
So you said that we have to trust the companions 100%, right? That's what they're saying, that they are 100% trustworthy, correct?
Yeah, because they're pure.
Right. Because they're pure. But companions said something to companion +1 generation, which is the Tabi'in generation. Tabi'in said something to Taba Tabi'in generation, which is the 3rd one. And then you have a 4th. Then you have a 5th. Then you have a 6th.
Top. They just keep on asking top. So
okay.
Yeah, you're talking about 8 generations.
So you are telling me that the first generation was okay, good. Okay, that would be a leap of faith. But who is discussing the rest of the generations? So you have 1, 2. Sorry, let me put this on the back. Don't change it. I'll bring it back. So 2, 3, 4, up to 8 generations. Okay, 8th gen. So you are telling me these are trustworthy, the 120,000. What about these rest? How do you believe all of these, that they actually transmitted exactly what these people said?
Exactly. Can you remember that? Can you hold on to that?
Okay, everyone, please hold on to this, and let's go back to
Because I'm going to ask the same thing of you at the very end. When we get to the end of the show, I'm going to ask you that same question. All right? Keep on.
Sounds like a plan.
That's a great one to start with. So let's now look, and I'm putting on a timeline there. Now, this is, so we don't know what anybody said because we have nothing written down to prove what they said was what they said. But at least Qadhi and Ali, at least the Yasir Qadhi and Shabir Ali, do believe that what we can trust is what is 200 years and 300 years after the fact. That we can trust. That's what they're saying. They're willing to go that much. Why? Because it's written down, because that we have in our hands. Isn't it interesting? They don't have any problem with what's in our hands today. Notice that. And they assume that what's in our hands today is exactly what Al-Bukhari wrote and Sahih Muslim wrote and Ibn Hisham and all the rest wrote. My question is what I asked at the very beginning of the hour, and I asked you about an hour ago, where are those 5 manuscripts that were written down as extant manuscripts for the Quran during the time of Uthman? Where is even one of them sent to the 5 cities? And you can answer that, could you? And that bothered you, didn't it?
Yes.
So I'm going to answer that same question I asked of the Quran. I'm going to ask of Muhammad. Where are these extant manuscripts of these guys that they do trust? The Ibn Hisham, Al-Waqidi, Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, Ibn Dawud, Tirmidhi, Al-Majah, Al-Nisai, and Al-Ta'abari.
Muwatta Malik.
And the Muwatta Malik. So don't forget him.